Something alive has been sealed under Antarctica's ice for longer than human civilization has existed. And the scientists who found it weren't supposed to say what it was. They filed the report. Then the report went quiet. The report didn't disappear on its own. That takes coordination. Here's what the public record actually shows. In the late 1980s, a drilling team working near Lake Vostok, one of the largest subglacial lakes on Earth, buried under roughly 2.5 miles of Antarctic ice, began pulling up ice core samples that contained something unexpected: microbial life. Not fossilized remnants, not chemical traces. Active biological material in liquid water that had been sealed beneath Antarctic ice for an estimated 15 million years. The lake itself sits in complete darkness, under pressure that would crush most organisms at temperatures that hover just below freezing. By every conventional measure, nothing should be alive down there. And yet, the drilling program ran for decades across multiple international research stations, and the findings were published in fragments. A study here, a brief in a scientific journal there, never assembled into a single, clean announcement. That pattern is worth noticing. When researchers confirm something genuinely unremarkable, they publish it in full. When the findings are distributed across separate institutions, across separate years, in language that grows progressively more cautious with each release, that's a different kind of signal. Now think about what 15 million years of isolation actually means. The last common ancestor of humans and chimpanzees walked the Earth roughly 7 million years ago. Whatever has been living under that ice has been evolving, adapting, surviving in total separation from every other living system on this planet for more than twice that span. It didn't come from our branch of the tree. It may not share the same cellular assumptions the rest of life on Earth operates on. The scientists who worked closest to the Lake Vostok samples weren't quiet because the findings were boring. One team member, speaking to a science correspondent years after the initial discovery, described the organism profiles as not matching anything in the reference databases. That phrase was in the original coverage. It didn't make the follow-up stories, which raises the question the report never answered. If it doesn't match the database, what exactly were they comparing it to? But that phrase, not matching anything in the reference databases, didn't just disappear quietly, it disappeared at a specific moment. Right around the time, a second separate drilling program operating roughly 200 miles away from Lake Vostok began reporting something structurally similar in its own core samples. 2 programs, 2 sites, the same anomaly, described in nearly identical language, filed within 18 months of each other. And then both sets of findings went into what researchers in adjacent fields started calling, informally, the holding pattern, not retracted, not peer-reviewed into the mainstream record, just sitting in institutional archives, technically accessible, functionally invisible. This is where the timeline gets harder to explain away. The scientific community's standard response to extraordinary biological findings is scrutiny, more testing, more publication, more independent replication. That's how the process is supposed to work, and it usually does. No correction needed, 1977 discovery date is accurate. The findings moved through the literature rapidly. Papers multiplied, researchers competed to characterize the organisms. The public heard about it within a few years. The Lake Vostok biology findings followed the opposite trajectory. The more specific the data became, the quieter the public record got. That's not how scientific excitement behaves. That's how managed disclosure behaves. Now, consider what was actually at stake in those samples. The organisms pulled from that sealed environment weren't just biologically unusual. According to the fragmented reporting that did surface, some of the cellular structures observed didn't conform to any of the 3 domains of life that account for all known life on Earth: bacteria, archaea, and eukarya. If that characterization is accurate, even partially, what the drilling teams found wasn't a strange microbe. It was something that doesn't belong on the existing map of life at all. Does that feel like the kind of finding that gets quietly filed away? Or does it feel like the kind of finding that someone, somewhere, decided the public wasn't ready to process? The question isn't whether the organisms exist. The samples are real. The cores are archived. What's still missing is the explanation for why the most significant biological discovery in recorded history was treated like a footnote, and who, exactly, made that call. When those researchers described the samples as not matching anything in the reference databases, did that read to you like an honest scientific dead end? Or like someone choosing their words very carefully? Drop your answer in the comments below, because what happened next to those archived samples raises an entirely different set of questions. Now, here is the part that doesn't show up in the archived reports at all. Those institutional archives where both sets of findings were quietly shelved, they weren't maintained by the research teams themselves. They were transferred. Within roughly 3 years of the second drilling program's anomalous results, custody of the core sample documentation shifted away from the universities and national science bodies that originally commissioned the work and moved into a joint international framework that has no public-facing publication mandate. Meaning, the people who now hold the most complete record of what was found under that ice are under no formal obligation to release it. Ever. That's not a conspiracy. That's a documented administrative structure, and it raises a straightforward question. Why does biological data need that kind of custody arrangement? Compare it to how similar discoveries have been handled. When researchers confirmed extremophile organisms living inside volcanic rock deep beneath the ocean floor, organisms surviving without sunlight, without oxygen, in conditions that should be lethal, the findings moved into open literature within a few years. The scientific community treated it as a win. Press coverage followed. The organisms were named, cataloged, and integrated into the broader understanding of where life can exist. The Lake Vostok material didn't get named. The organisms described in those fragmented reports, the ones whose cellular structures didn't conform to either domain of life, have no taxonomy. They have no entry in any public biological registry. For something that was reportedly sampled, observed under microscopy, and described in written reports filed by credentialed researchers, the absence of a formal classification isn't an oversight. Classification is one of the first things science does. It's how you stake a claim. It's how you prove you found something. If those organisms were classified, that record exists somewhere. If they weren't, that's a stranger omission than anything in the reports themselves. Here's what the timeline actually looks like when you lay it flat. Discovery, fragmented publication, parallel confirmation at a second site, custody transfer, and then silence. Not denial, not debunking. Just a very organized, very institutional quiet, the kind that requires sign-off at levels most researchers never reach. The samples didn't vanish. The people who processed them are still working. And at least 2 of them, in separate interviews given years apart, used the same phrase without apparently knowing the other had used it. Above my clearance level. Now, here is where the silence stops being just institutional and starts being geographic. In the years following the custody transfer of those core sample records, something else began moving. Not data, but people. Specifically, the kind of people who have access to the best information on Earth. Quietly and in one direction. The Southern Hemisphere. Patagonia in particular. This isn't a new observation, but the scale of it has sharpened considerably through 2025 and into 2026. Large land acquisitions in Chilean and Argentine Patagonia, remote, defensible, positioned near the southern tip of a continent that sits roughly 2,000 miles from the Antarctic coastline, have been accumulating at a pace that real estate analysts tracking the region have started describing as migration-driven demand, not tourism speculation. Verify current Chilean foreign land ownership law before publishing. The claim that there are zero size limitations or ownership caps requires sourcing from a current legal authority on Chilean property law. That legal structure makes it the easiest place on Earth for someone with significant capital to quietly consolidate a very large footprint in the Southern Hemisphere without triggering the kind of regulatory scrutiny that would follow a similar purchase almost anywhere else. I'm not claiming that everyone buying land in Patagonia knows something about what's under Antarctica's ice. That would be a reach, and I don't deal in reaches. What I'm pointing to is something more specific. Revealed preference. When the people with the best information start moving in a particular direction, that movement is itself a data point. You don't have to know why they're moving to notice that they are. Now pair that with the Antarctic Treaty's actual enforcement structure. There is no agreed definition of biological resources within the framework, no requirement to share findings from biological collection activities, and material held in collections outside Antarctica falls into a legal gray area where existing treaty rules may not apply at all. The treaty was designed in 1959. There exists no dedicated legal provision within it to directly govern bioprospecting activities in the Antarctic region. It has no mechanism to compel disclosure of biological findings, none. The signatory nations operate under what amounts to a gentleman's agreement. Share what you choose, when you choose, framed however you choose. That gap is not an accident of drafting. It is a structural feature that has survived decades of revision without being closed. So, lay it flat. The drilling halt, the fragmented publication record, the custody transfer to a body with no public mandate, the legal architecture that makes disclosure entirely voluntary, and the quiet accumulation of infrastructure and land at the bottom of the world by people who, professionally, do not make uninformed bets. Individually, each of those has an explanation. Together, they have a direction. And the direction they point has never changed. The drilling team that went quiet. The report that was filed and then wasn't. That image has been sitting at the center of everything assembled here, and it deserves a direct answer, not about what was found, but about what the behavior around it actually means. I don't know what is under that ice. I'm not going to pretend I do. But I notice that every institution with the clearance to know has made the same choice, and that choice is silence. That is not nothing. That is a policy. Think about how consequential discoveries have historically been managed. Not suppressed outright, that's too crude, too visible, too easy to expose. What actually happens is routing, delay, contextualization before release. The finding gets real, gets confirmed, gets quietly handed to a body that controls the framing, and then it surfaces on someone else's timeline, in someone else's language, shaped for an audience that's been prepared to receive a specific version of it. That's not a conspiracy. That's communications infrastructure. Every major government on Earth has it. The question is whether Antarctica fits that template or breaks it. And the honest answer, based on everything the public record actually shows, is that it fits it almost perfectly, except for one detail. The contextualization never came. The managed release never happened. The version prepared for public consumption was never released, which means either the process stalled or whoever controls it decided the public preparation phase isn't finished yet. Both of those possibilities are more unsettling than a cover-up. Under 2 miles of ice, something was alive. The official explanation has never been satisfying, and the people who find official explanations satisfying are not the ones building infrastructure at the end of the world. The silence may actually be protecting something more consequential than dangerous information. If what was found beneath that ice represents a genuinely separate origin of life, a second genesis, running on different cellular logic, surviving for 15 million years in complete isolation, then whoever controls the narrative around that discovery controls something far larger than a scientific finding. They control the answer to the oldest question our species has ever asked. And that kind of leverage doesn't get released on a peer review timeline. It gets held until someone decides the moment is right. That moment hasn't come. The silence continues. And the infrastructure keeps expanding. Subscribe if you want to watch more videos about unusual truths.